Thank you, folks. Nice to be invited down here. Nice to come here anyway. Nice to see some familiar faces in the audience and new faces as well. A little bit of propaganda to start with. On the table here is some information on just some calendars of day trips and other tours that I don't lead all the trips. I've now luckily got 5 people working for me. So and they're all actually a lot younger than I am now, which is really good. I can just sit back and relax. Yeah, right. But also on the table here, there's a gift certificate for a free day trip. So if you'd like to win that, I put some forms in a box, so just drop them in and I'll bring out a free day trip at the end. And the day trip includes lunch, which is all mostly naturally sourced around Western North Carolina. So we do try and keep things local. Okay, what I put together this morning, excuse me, I've sort of got a little bit of a frog it's appearing, is a somewhat tongue-in-cheek. People say to me, they say, leading a birding trip and traveling must be so exotic. Well, it is a little exotic, but we're dealing with people. If you could just deal with animals and birds, it would be simpler. But we have to deal with people. So I've put together this just as a sort of fun way of telling you about some of the things that we do. I shouldn't ask if anyone knows where this picture came from, but it hit the news last year or the year before in a big way. I stole this picture off the internet, which is wonderful when you need something just a little bit racy. That was the front page of that dating website called Ashley Madison. when all those politicians and people all got caught up. They're really, really funny. But, so hopefully I'll try and stand out of the way. I'm a bit fidgety, so I'll try and stand out of the way as we go through this. And, okay. Some of it has words, some of it's just pretty pictures, so I'm not going to read them. I think you're all adults and you're quite capable, but I will tell you where some of the pictures that maybe were taken, that's the middle of Australia, by the way. That's one of those places you have to wear a hat, sunglasses, a bandana to stop the flies going in your mouth, and ears and nose, but it's wonderful. I'd go back tomorrow. It's also about 40 degrees centigrade. So anyway. I think that's Lady Gaga, actually. Certainly isn't one of our groupies. And I can safely tell you it's not for the money. And I heard one of those singing as I drove, where was I? Driving through the county, part of the county on the way here. There was a nice yellow-throated warbler singing. Oh, I've hit the wrong button. There we are. There we are. And I just got back from a week up at Snowbird Lodge in Graham County, which is a great place for many reasons, but the birding up there, we saw loads of Blackburnian warblers, just lots and lots of scarlet tanagers, grosbeaks, all coming in. Spring is great, it's exhausting. I think I've seen my partner 3 days since the beginning of January. But then we've done a little bit of serious traveling this year. Yeah, it's a red-capped manakin. It's a little tiny tropical bird. We were leading a trip to Belize, and one of these little birds turned up near the breakfast table. You see, eat outside, and everyone rushed to see it. I stayed behind just because all the food was about to arrive at the dining table. And the waiter said, well, where is everybody? And I said, well, they went to see a bird. And he went, oh God, birders. Yes, some people do think of us that way, but that we are a little myopic at times. I was looking, I'll tell you a funny story before we get into this. I had a bunch of friends at Snowbird last week, and they said to me, I take them on birding trip, a special birding trip every year, and they said, we want to go somewhere exotic, fun, enjoyable, and a little bit different. Well, I found a whole list of places, including one to see a bird called the Afghan snowfinch. And they said, would it happen to be in Afghanistan? I said, I hope not. But the trip actually starts in, you have to fly into Kabul, Afghanistan. And I went, not a chance. I'm not doing that one. So hopefully we'll get something slightly more reliable, should we say? And that's a fancy, fancy, fancy bird. Those are what people over here call parakeets, the little tiny green ones. Mm-hmm. In the wild, they only occur in green. And of course, in captivity, they're in blue and yellow and white. But these things come in these huge flocks, they wheel in, they dip down for maybe 1 second, have a drink, and then they're off again. Because raptors like to sit there and think of it as a movable buffet. Let's think what we've got here. You know the bottom left, that's an easy one. I heard one of those this morning. The middle one is from Ecuador, that's called a toucan barbet, sort of related to woodpeckers. It's a choco endemic, only found in southern Ecuador, northern Peru. No, southern Colombia, northern Ecuador. A little green bee eater, and probably a good idea to turn them off. And an upland sandpiper that was on the front lawn of, I think, the Home Depot in Anchorage one year. So you never know where birds are going to appear. And yes, I tell people this birding lark is a little addictive, so just be warned. That last place was in Panama. That's God, what is that bird? There's red grouse in the bottom left right-hand corner from Scotland, and the hummingbird top left is a violet-tailed sylph from Ecuador. I saw he was our doorman at this in Mysore at the hotel, and I just said, I have to take your photograph. You are so distinctive. I think they wanted him there for the tourists to take photographs. Please note it's not raining. We had 2 days in Edinburgh in beautiful sunshine. And we do look at other things apart from birds. If you haven't been over to Cleveland, Tennessee, Hiawassee National Wildlife Refuge is just north of Chattanooga, easy drive. Every winter, 10 to 15,000 sandhill cranes. Very impressive. And if you go a little bit farther to Wheeler National Wildlife Refuge, just north of Huntsville, Decatur, Alabama, it's almost 20,000 sandhill cranes, including up to a dozen whooping cranes as well. We're going to be going there next winter, definitely. That's my office. Actually, I think my office is messier than that. There are more boxes. There aren't that many nice organized shelves. Yes. If we didn't have to deal with airlines and airports these days, life would be a lot simpler. Does anyone have a clue where that is? Somewhere in Africa, yeah. Good one, yes. That is Accra in Ghana. I grew up there, went back 3 years ago. I think everyone had 50 babies since I was there. You've never seen cities so congested, and it was incredible. And that was the road we were supposed to take. Had a landslide the previous night. This is in Colombia, South America. If we didn't take that road, which was only about 6 miles to where we were going, it was an 8-hour round trip. We got shovels out, we got everything out to try and clear the mud. I'm going to go back to it. I think if I can go back, oh, wrong one. I'm trying to find the right button on this thing, sorry. There we are. There we are. And the funny thing about this, there were 6 of us. I think it was 4 men, 2 women. We had 3 pairs of mud boots. 1 pair of women's, 2 pair of men's. It was one of those mathematical challenges when you say 3 men, 2 women, these are the number of pairs of boots. How long did it take them to cross a muddy slope? So we would go back with 1 pair of boots, come back, it was really most entertaining. But we got through without sliding down into the river. Yeah, that was fun as well. That was in northern Ghana, in the rainy season. See, this is what I do on my time off, actually, as well. Yeah, it looks absolutely beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. The only problem was none of the vehicles are equipped for this weather. We had this little van, we were in a bus, which had some decent tires. The vehicle that came down the road to meet us had bald tires and was sliding all over the road. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. That's in Bhutan in the Himalayas. So there's lots of vertical drops. And we came around one of the corners and there was a truck hanging over the edge. Oh my God. It had, the driver was in the bus, but nobody else, all the passengers had got out. It was a cycling group from Colorado. They were all fine, but their bicycles were about to disappear down a mountain. They didn't, thankfully. And that's Namibia in southwestern Africa. Very, very dry, but very, very great scenery. That's where our ruby-throated hummingbirds winter. That's northern Honduras on the Caribbean coast. Impossible to hike through because it's just one giant thorn thicket. It is true. Actually, I could say garbage dumps or sewage ponds. Those are the other places we end up. And the reason we were at, this is Barrow in Alaska, which, has anyone ever been there? It's a different planet. It is part of the United States, and that's about as far as I would go. Every piece of equipment they've ever owned is still there, sinking slowly into the permafrost and mud. It's a dry town. So that means the roadsides are littered with birth bottles. Anyway, we went to see what gulls were at the garbage dump. The white ones are glaucous gulls, glaucous meaning white, and that one on with the piece in its mouth, does anyone have a clue what that is it's eating? Yes, the locals are, yeah, yummy. Especially fermented whale blubber, lovely. But this other gull in the bottom corner with the dark back is from Siberia, and that's really rare. And most bird watchers, including me, find gulls not very exciting. And there are lots of them, and they all look the same, essentially. There we are. Gosh, I've got more grey whiskers now. Yikes. Yes, shoe polishing. Okay, now for the meat. I wouldn't go to Venezuela. Actually, I don't think it's possible. Most of the hotels have closed, all the ranches have it's just a disaster. But anyway, before pre-Chavez, Venezuela was actually a really cool birding destination. Well, I'm not mentioning names, and it doesn't matter because this person doesn't live anywhere close to here. I'm busy working, showing people birds, making sure we get to the hotel, talking to the local guide. And there was a lady on the trip. Her aim wasn't to see birds, was to see how many men on the trip she could sleep with. This was going on while I was birding. And I was, once suddenly halfway through the trip, somebody said, "You do know what's going on, don't you?" I went, "No, what?" And then this woman came up to me and she said, "Simon, I'm in love with the bus driver." And I went, "Grow up." It was all this was going on while I was trying to deal with everything else on the trip. Hang on, let me get back. And that wasn't the only thing that went on. The first day, somebody lost some money. It wasn't really lost. The second day, there was a lost camera. The third day, lost binoculars. Fourth day, this lady fell over on the trail. Blood all down her face. It wasn't serious. She was lying in the back of the bus just, "Oh, I'm dying, I'm dying." And then I looked out the window and said, "Oh, look, a toucan." And she said, Where? It was all for show, I think. The next, we lost a person completely in a hotel. She couldn't find her way out of the hotel. One of the group afterwards, this was the same lady in the beginning, the one with all the conquests. And one of the other members of the group, under their breath, said, "She should have stayed lost." My mother was on this trip. She was sick from day one to the end of the trip. We were sitting at dinner one night, I think it was the last day, and I looked at her and I said, "Mother, are you okay?" And you could see her just turning green. I've never seen this on a person. She was just going completely green. I said, "I think you need to leave now." She went back to the bedroom, her room, was violently ill. As she was being sick, she broke the hot tap off the side of the bathroom. The jets of hot water went cascading across the room. This was just another daily occurrence. We had a bridge washed away. We were at this lovely ranch in Venezuela, out in the llanos, the big plains, and we were served pancakes for breakfast. And I said, "Oh, how nice. Do you have any syrup?" "No." He said, "In Venezuela, we eat pancakes with jam." And I went, "Great. Do you have any jam?" "No." I thought, this conversation is not really going anywhere, is it? Another episode, another fellow turned on his hot tap, couldn't turn it off. We were in these little rooms. You couldn't see across the room. All 4 rooms were completely full of steam. And that's how the trip continued. At the end of it, I needed a holiday.
So you stay in nice places?
Yes, we stay in nice places. Yeah, we had a bridge go out. Thankfully, there was a little dinghy waiting to take us across. We had one dinghy for people, one dinghy for luggage. The next time it went across, there was a cow in the dinghy trying to get across the river. You never know what's going to happen. See, I'm not really putting you off. I do this all the time. The bomb threat was in, of all places, Costa Rica.
Oh my God.
Somewhere you don't expect to have one. The airport was closed. Some of the group, I was already in Costa Rica, thankfully. I was going a day early. Most of the group ended up in Panama. And got back to Costa Rica at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had to go and meet them. We didn't get much sleep that night. Anyone here been to Chile? Awesome country, lovely place. That's Torres del Paine National Park. And that's my other half, that's Chris. Back when he had brown hair as well. So there's a recurring theme, this, isn't it?
He looks really different from that picture.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's my mum on the right. She came to Chile. This is airports for you. You travel around from Chile. You could just jump airports from one to the other. Lots of little jumps. Mum always travels with a bottle of scotch. She throws it in her backpack. Of course, this was pre all of the you cannot carry liquids and all this stuff. And to be honest, in some countries they still don't care about that. So she had a bottle of scotch in her backpack. We get to Asuncion, they say, you can't take that on the plane, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And my mother is a bit hard of hearing, and so she and the guy at the airport promptly started to have an argument at 10 o'clock in the morning. And he said, madam, you cannot take that whiskey on the boat, on the plane. So she takes the top off and starts to drink it. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I thought, this is not going well. And so I jump in and say, no, don't worry, I have another bag. I'll put the whiskey in my bag and we'll check it. I could imagine her slugging 3/4 of a bottle of whiskey just to refuse to give it up to these people. Because every other airport around the country couldn't have cared less.
Yep.
Oh, they're cute. God, they're cute. That's a little rodent like a chinchilla called a vizcacha. They always look like they've had some whiskey, don't they? Mm-hmm. Anyway, we're going to take a quick trip to Panama. This is the Darien Gap, which is the gap of forest between Panama and Colombia, where the Pan American Highway stops and the forest starts. We went down to look for a harpy eagle, which is pretty cool. And this was like a pre-trip or a post-trip. We had a big Panama trip. There's my mum again. She always seems to get in on the act. And we went traipsing through the forest to look for this harpy eagle. And there he is on the left, looking out of his nest up in the tops of the tree. It's a young one. And the local guide brought along, they said, is your mother coming? I said, yes. And they asked me how old she was, and I told them, old woman, is what they said. And of course she turns up, and they carry all the equipment, including a chair. And I said, what's the chair for? They said, oh, that's for the old lady. So I told Mother that in the middle of the forest, she said, you have to sit on their chair, at least to please them. So in the middle of the forest, this is her, mud up to her waist, because it was so muddy, sitting on the chair like a throne in the middle of the forest. Yeah. Oh God, yes. I remember this one. This is the Amazon rainforest, where you don't expect any medical things at all. Beautiful sky, beautiful birds, great lodge, all sorts of fun things. But, hang on, wrong button, here we are. I am so glad that airline is defunct. It was terrible. I remember it was called Fawcett Airlines. Does anyone here fly it? You're very lucky. They play bingo on the planes, to get your mind off how awful the flight is. It was named after Elmer Fawcett. It was an American fellow. I think he lived in Peru, and this airline was pre-Aero Peru, which we used to call Aero Perhaps. But now it's owned by LAN, which is the Chilean airline, so it's all first world. But Fawcett Airlines had these horrible, L1011s or whatever this thing is, and I remember one trip it was cooler in the Amazon once we got there than it was on the plane getting there. It was so bad. I think most planes actually either conked out or crashed. But anyway, we were on a trip to Peru. We had a person on the trip. This is why dealing with people is a challenge. They were fine, healthy, but they got a nosebleed on the trip. And fine, not a problem. The next day they passed out through lack of blood. And here we were, miles away from anywhere in the middle of the rainforest. I took a boat trip down the river by myself with this person, and they were sort of semi-conscious, and they were just lying there looking up at macaws and parrots. And the next day, I think they said, "Gosh, that was a beautiful boat trip." And here I was going, "You have no idea what we were doing." But anyway, they got to the little clinic in the middle of the rainforest, run by a lady from Wisconsin, really well-equipped clinic. And she said, "You are going to," this to the person, "you are going to sit in a hammock for the rest of your holiday and trip, and we're going to give you cocaine." After all, this is Peru. The cocaine actually came from Boston. Yes. Tincture of cocaine, and you put that in your nasal passages. It constricts the blood vessels and stops it bleeding. So if you get a nosebleed, don't worry about keys, just get cocaine. It works so much better, apparently. And anyway, the person ended up being absolutely fine at the end of the trip, thankfully. But after losing 3 pints of blood, ooh, yes, ooh. And a friend said, "Why are you so calm?" I said, "I can't be anything but calm. If I start to panic, it doesn't achieve anything." But anyway, phew. Anyway. Has anyone ever seen or been close to a giant antleater? No. They are the coolest animals. This one, I've still never seen one, quote unquote, in the wild. This was in the middle of the forest. And I hear some rustling and I see a giant antleater. Suddenly it rushes out of the forest and comes straight up towards me and looks at me. And I go, "Well, this obviously isn't very wild." And apparently it was a rehabbed animal. I started stroking it. It's like stroking a broom. It's not a single thing about that animal is soft and fuzzy. It's one of the most amazing things you'll ever see. I fed one once, a baby one, with a big Coke bottle full of milk, and his tongue goes in and goes. But they are cool animals, very cool animals. Mexico, wonderful place to go. Great birds, wonderful history, and good food as well. I like Mexico a lot. I just wish it just got a little bit less risky at the moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, hang on, come on. This is Oaxaca in southwestern Mexico. Great place to go. Beautiful, one of the UNESCO National Historic City. Pretty cool birds as well. Black-vented oriole. This is almost unbelievable, this story. I was driving a van, not that one, a regular passenger van, bunch of people in it, up the top of the mountain after the boat trip, looking for hummingbirds. We get back in the van after birding, I turn the engine on, click. Here I am, miles from anywhere. Near any town or city, the odd farm around, click, and I just discuss actions for along comes a very good-looking Mexican man on a white horse. He speaks perfect English and says, "Excuse me, but do you have a problem?" And I said, "Yes, the car won't work." He said, "Don't worry, I have jumper cables." So, not with his horse. He went back, got his truck, and came back and jumped us off. It probably was a damp lead. Who knows why our car didn't start. But anyway, I discovered that the hotel was it was his cousin, the cousin of the people who owned the hotel. He said, "Oh, I know." His word travels. And so his sisters or his cousin down in the hotel had contacted him and said, "Some of my clients are up near you today. Just keep an eye out for them." But I couldn't believe this guy came along on a white horse to rescue us. Okay, yeah, this is that story. Chris wanted his picture taken next to a yak, and you see the yak was just not awfully interested, but the tree behind, you can see the rhododendron trees, all in full bloom, absolutely spectacular. This is spring. The next pic, well, I should have put a picture in, but we came across a field of marijuana. It was all about sort of 2 feet deep. So Chris said, "I've always wanted to do this." He's just started rolling around in the field. National Geographic says that the Paro Festival in Bhutan is one of the 10 things on the planet you must not miss. We didn't actually plan to be there at the time, but it happened to be going on at the beginning of our trip, which is a birding trip, of course. So every afternoon when we finished birding, we all rushed to see the dancing at the festival. It was spectacular, as are the birds. That was just taken on, he was feeding on the side of the road. See, it all looks beautiful, doesn't it? Here's another funny story. Our local guide, I went twice with the same company, and they said, "What do Westerners like to drink with their dinner?" Because we had campsites. And I think a glass of wine, scotch, whatever. We got to the campsite. A bottle of red wine, a bottle of white wine, a bottle of scotch, vodka, a bottle of rum. It was this line just going down the table. So that was going to last us quite a while. But anyway. We were camping. This is part of the story I mentioned earlier. We were camping. Rain came up from India. You can look straight down from Bhutan into India. Rain hit the high elevations. It snowed. That's the main road. This is where the bus with the bicycles was hanging over the...
It's still spring?
It's spring. This is spring. Yes. These are all prayer flags that you can see in the snow. Chris and I got out and had a snowball fight. I think somebody then told us to grow up because they were all panicking about the snow. See, that's our bus there. Mm-hmm. Or the other bus. The camping gear was in one bus. There we are, in the snow. But our bus had the food in it. So we were fine. I did say that the bicycles were saved, but another vehicle with the driver did go over a cliff. That wasn't good. Bolivia was awesome. This is one of the few times I've seen a crack in somebody's armor. This was Chris. We were driving, and he's a good driver, and we were driving down some of these roads, and Bolivia is very mountainous. And he just stopped the car, and I said, what's wrong? He said, I can't do this. I said, do what? He said, you just look out of the window and you look down 1,000 feet. There's a road called the Yungas Highway. Has anyone been on it? It's hairpin bends that go from 14,000 feet down to about 500 feet.
Oh my gosh.
It's spectacular but terrifying. And the buses, when they have to pass each other, the end of the bus goes over the edge as they wiggle and go down. It is not for the faint of heart. Yeah, I was on a similar trip in Peru with some tour guides, and we were on one of these roads going up to one of the ancient ruins, and the road was awful with bumps and things, and every time you went over a bump, if you were on the left-hand side of the bus, you just looked straight down a mountain. And I moved to the right-hand side of the bus, and a friend said, oh, Simon, if the left-hand side goes over, the right usually follows. So we actually made the driver stop and say, we aren't doing this any longer like this. Rebellion that day. These little girls, they were 7 and 9, and they knew how to open a beer and were serving us in the restaurant. And I thought, very civilized here. They were cute, very cute. Anyway, here's in synopsis of the story. We were at this ancient ruin called Tihuacan. I think the Gates of the Sun, a beautiful Inca site. Chris loves that. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I go, we need to get to our hotel. It's on the lake, on Lake Titicaca. We were driving a rental car. We look at the map. It goes, oh God, it's 4 hours back to La Paz and another 5 to our hotel. That isn't going to work. We asked the local people. They said, oh, it's easy. Just go into Peru and back in. It'll take you an hour maximum. We drove towards very naive, driving towards the border with our rental car. We stopped, picked up a hitchhiker who happened to be a border guard. He was very gracious. We took him to the border, where he promptly got to work. We went in and he said, oh, we've got a rental car. You're not allowed to take it out of the country. But he says, as you've been so kind to me, he said, stamp, 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 stamp. He looked at his watch and said, you have 1 hour to get back to Bolivia through Peru. And Chris looked at me and went, no birding. We got to the Peruvian border station after driving around that little bit of the lake, and the guard there thought, 2 gringos, let's see what we can bribe them with. I would like so many Bolivianos. No, it was sol, because it was Peru, sol. And I looked at him and in my best Spanish said, we don't have any Peruvian currency. We've only been in the country for an hour. He said, okay, so-and-so, however many Bolivianos. And I said, here's $5. How does that sound? And he said, very good, thank you. And led us back into Bolivia again. He just looked at me and said, I don't believe this. So. That's Colombia. It rains a lot in Colombia, but it's a great place. More birds than any other country in the world. I know, you just go, no, 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 no. But we did it. That is Quito, Ecuador. That's Mount, whatever the mountain right next to Quito is called. Normally when a volcano goes off, the airport gets the information, all the planes leave. I think the pilots were partying the night before. We got to the airport, all the planes were still there, covered in ash. And they can't take off because the ash goes into the engines. So we had to take a bus halfway down the country, but we all were walking around Quito with little masks on so we didn't breathe the ash. That is Barrow again, Barrow, Alaska. All those people are looking at something out on the ice. This was the, don't think anyone's here now, this was the second time I dropped the F-bomb on a trip. For an obvious reason. Hang on, we haven't got there yet. I've also got a bit more pre-trips here. Alaska, that's what we saw on the ice. And I just was so excited I forgot where I was for a minute. And that woke everyone up. Normally I'm try to be as polite as possible. When everyone was napping, we were looking for a bird just before our flight. I just went, oh, polar bear! And that woke everyone up instantly. But he was out on the ice just outside town. Absolutely incredible. And it's not often you see something like that. The locals apparently, they're allowed to kill 2 bowhead whales a year for sustenance. And the problem is all of the bones and blubber attract polar bears. So they put it out on the ice away from town, and that's where we were with this fellow. Not sure what I'm doing here. Come on. There he is. You can see him eat the blubber out on the ice. He didn't like us, and so he took a big piece of blubber and went behind a big ice crag to eat his food in peace and quiet away from his appreciative crowd. See, you have to get to the real point here. And all of this is worthwhile. Stella's Idas, Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. This is a cassowary. It can disembowel you with a kick. It's not a nice bird. Oh. This is a friend of mine's house, which just happens to be near a national park. This is the male cassowary, and they look after the chicks. And if you get too close, it tries to chase you away. But because my friend's house was in its territory, it walked up. She says, I have to keep the door closed, otherwise the bird is in the house. Oh my God. And she has to use a broom to get it back out of the house. But it put its head through the window and was eating apples out of the fruit bowl. You could just see them go. Oh, yes. Look at that. I've got a photo of this hummingbird on a hummingbird feeder. 10 of them fitting every single hole. Somebody said, oh, you photoshopped it. I went, no, this is actually how it is. You get lots and lots of hummingbirds at the feeders at the same time. Similar to the American one, but with a black head instead of a brown one. Mm-hmm. That's another hummingbird. And yes, I have birded in Dubai. It's a very strange place. The only reason to go to Dubai is to change planes or to go birding. But it's just a weird, weird place. That's Namibia again, southwestern Africa. I can't believe those springboks actually can find anything to eat. There we are. I'm going to pass that round, and that's going to be, if you want to, of course, this is a thinly veiled attempt that if you want to come on trips with me in the future, not some of these, some ones that, actually 99% of them are really great, but you don't have to put, you can just put your name, otherwise you're going to end up on my little email list. But it's all very, we don't send out very often, them out very often, but then I'll pull a gift certificate out at the end of the session. Has anyone got any questions, thoughts, ideas?
Put it in there.
Here, Mary Neal.
Put them in there.
Put them in there. Cool. Yes?
You haven't done New Guinea yet?
I've been to Papua, which is Western New Guinea, the Indonesian part, which for years has been off limits. Now it's easy, just we flew to a little town and did some of it. So we saw some birds of paradise. We saw lesser bird of paradise and a couple of others. Awesome. Papua New Guinea, sort of was administered by Australia, is prohibitively expensive. Hotel rooms are $300 a night in the middle of the forest. There's no logic. When in Papua, we were paying $45 a night for a hotel. They would rather have 2 people staying at $300 a night than 10 people at $75 a night. And they'd rather be empty than you having to be off a bargain basement prices. Have you been there? I'd still go. To see birds of paradise, that for most people is the sort of the ultimate in places to go for birds. Yes.
Do you realize you've taught people out of making any trips?
Actually, then I should come back again and do a program all on the good things.
But may I say that
Yes.
you're never more alive than when you think you're going to die?
Yes. On none of these things did I think I was going to die. That's never occurred to me. Even though when I was in a plane once, and it was we were coming into land, and then the stall alarm went off, and I went, we're not very close to the runway still, and the alarm's going off. But we managed to land safely, and you just have to have a sense of adventure and a sense of self-preservation, but 99.9% of the time, everything is great. Yes. Yes?
Any more pens?
Do I have any more pens? Yes. There's a load of pens coming up here. So I remember once talking of another little story. We were going through one of the African game parks, thick black mud, and the van got stuck. Who had to get out and push it? And we pushed the van, the guys did. Meanwhile, we put other people around as, what do you call those? Outlookers, to make sure no elephants or lions came close to us. But it wasn't bad. We survived. Yes? Here? Oh, gosh. Yes, let's talk about birds. Spring is here. Every day, more and more birds are coming through. I just stopped up at Warrior Mountain on my way here, which I think is the PAC.
Norman Wilder?
Sorry?
Norman Wilder?
Not Wilder. It was the one, it's the Walcott Tract. I think the Walcott Tract up on Warrior Mountain. You just drive through it. It's vertical. I had scarlet tanagers, rose-breasted grosbeak, wood thrush, indigo buntings, 2 vireos, and at least 10 different warblers. Indigos will nest here, and they're going to be quite common when they get here. Most of these birds that come through, a lot are going north, but a lot will stay. There's a really good drive. If you start in Saluda and go down the Green River Cove Road through the game lands and end up at Lake Adger, that is a spectacular drive for birds. The first mile or two is a little hairpinny, but after that, there are Kentucky warblers, Swainson's warblers, black-throated greens, hoodeds, there's loads of warblers. You get down to the lake, there's osprey, cliff swallow's nest, so that's a really good place. The only thing about birding now we've got leaves is knowing the songs. The songs, learning songs is a challenge. You just have to be outside as much as possible. There was an indigo bunting singing as I walked in the door here. They love brushy habitat, and they probably nest around the building here.
You pretty much now listen and then look.
Yeah, that's how I do all my birding, is by listening. So even if I'm in Australia, that's how I'll find everything. We can only see what's in front of us. We can hear 360 degrees and through the forest. So that's the best way. But I would just go out. I was asked to lead a walk. I'd be happy to come down and lead a walk for folks here as well, in any time, spring or fall. Fall's different, lots of birds. Singing isn't as important. Yes. Yes. Yes.
I'm wondering whether you know of, or would recommend I guess it was a CD
Yeah.
that was fairly accurate, that you could learn the birds around us.
Okay.
It's a language.
Yes. There are several different ways to learn bird songs. One, of course, is going outside with somebody who knows what they're doing. The second one is there's a Cornell Lab of Ornithology website. I think it's called All About Birds, and you can just play the songs. Or you can get CDs. There's 2 different versions of the CDs. There's one called Birding by Ear. It's a Peterson Field. Do you know that one? I'm sure you do, yes. It's a learning aid. It's called Peterson's Birding by Ear. I sold my shop. Yes, I sold the shop. We are free, yes. We haven't got any money, but we have plenty of time to travel. And so that helps you learn the difference between a catbird, a mockingbird, and a thrasher. It puts them in groups, birding by ear. The regular birding CDs just have one bird after another after another. It's an encyclopedia. It's kind of boring. The other way is an app. I have an app on my phone. I have a couple of them. This one is called iBird Pro. It's just been updated, and I don't like it as much as it used to.
What is that one again?
It's called iBird Pro. I, as in iPhone, Bird, P-R-O, Pro. The National Geographic has one, which is very good. But I'm going to play wood thrush. It gives you the song, the distribution, and a bit of information about the bird. Great learning aid, but that's wood thrush there. And they're singing right now. They've just started to come in the last maybe week or so. And they often sing first thing in the morning, which is also the best time to be out. Wood thrush, a wood thrush. It nests all throughout the area. About these apps, what we're playing on this phone is a male wood thrush singing. It's the male birds that do the singing, establishing a territory, attracting a mate. If I went outside and played this wood thrush, and there's a wood thrush out there, I'm putting another male in his territory. It can get some... I use it at certain times of the year to attract birds in. And sometimes the thrush will fly in and look for the interloper who isn't there. So you have to use it with discretion and not during the breeding season, because it can upset birds a lot. Birds have birds for 15 minutes. They usually have forgotten what's been going on. But if it's persistently played, it can drive a bird nuts because it can't find the other male in its territory. And it stresses them out a lot. So just if you use an app, use it with discretion at home, or if you do use it outside, just a few times and then leave it alone. I always tell people pay me to do this. I just got a guy who came down. We went over to Zora and Jay's house, and we went to look for, he wanted to see a Swainson's warbler, a prothonotary warbler, a whippoorwill, and a chuckwill's widow. Three quite difficult birds, one easy-ish. He flew from New York, and we did 2 solid days to find these birds for him. He paid me well, and we got all 4. But we went at night. We used the chuckwill's widow call. Once we were close to the bird, it came in, then it saw us and flew off. but so you can use them for certain occasions. Yes?
What was his reason for those 4 birds?
He hadn't seen them. Bird people, the more obsessed you get, it's sort of like car people or anything else that you take to an obsession stage. I mean, I'm as bad. I will say this. I've seen almost every bird in North America, except for an owl in Arizona, a chickadee in Alaska, which I'm probably not going to see, and a couple of other bits and pieces. I went to Ecuador a few years ago, and I had my shopping list. I gave the local guide a list of 20 birds. I said, these are what I want to see. And he laughed. I said, what's so funny? He said, these are really hard. And I went, that's why I haven't seen them. He said, are you prepared to go off the trail and hike through the forest just blindly, with the guide? And I said, absolutely. By the end of the week, I'd seen 13 of those 20. So he got a nice tip, because some of those birds were really hard. So those people are called world listers. And I've seen now, there are 10,000 species of birds in the world, roughly. I've seen about 6,500 now. Wow. Working on it, but they get harder and harder and harder. Yeah, I'm going, and if I go to Costa Rica, I've been there 8 times now. So I usually go on a trip, go early or stay late. We did a big trip to Australia in November. It was a month in Australia. Fabulous trip. On the way back, everyone went home. The plane happened to, the route I chose stopped in Fiji on the way home. I'd never been to Fiji. 35 birds I'd never seen before. So that's the craziness. Okay, have we done this? Shall I make a drawing? Are we done?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay. Liz, would you like to pull a winner out?
I'd be delighted, but I'm hoping to win.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it is,
Yeah. Great. This is a gift certificate for one of our day trips, so I haven't filled it in, but there we are.
Okay, I just fill it in.
Yeah, just fill it in. And here on the table are some lists of the day trips. So you might like one of those, so you may have got one the other day at Fence, and a list of, and there's also some little magnets you can take which have the logo on them. So help yourself to that. Yes. When am I doing the next local one? I'm not sure what our next day trip is. Let's have a look. Now I have to find my glasses. March, April, May. April. That one is full. Well, Spring Warbler Workshop's full. There's several in May. Those are the next ones. There we are. And we are doing some stuff at Fence from time to time as well. Both Aaron and I come down from time to time and do some walks. So, well, thanks for all your patience, and hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I haven't put you off.